we're kind of all at different points in our real estate journey. Some of us are just getting started, and obviously, some of us have very large portfolios. I can't see Chris, but he's somewhere here. I'm kind of in the midpoint, and particularly for you younger people who have not lived through a kind of a cycle like it appears we are in, I thought it would be very valuable to bring someone out who has an incredible perspective on the industry, having really got started in it in right around 1980 or so, maybe even a little earlier. So with that, let me bring out my friend Bruce Fairty of Cypress Equity Investments.
Hello.
All right. I met Bruce a couple of months ago, actually. Artem Tepler brought us together for lunch, and Bruce sort of casually mentioned at some point that he had built 35,000 apartments, and I was just like, so I said, and then I basically took up lunch interviewing you, to be honest, and it was so interesting.
You're subtle.
And I said, this is really interesting. I bet these guys would like to hear it. So I appreciate you coming out here, and maybe we'll.
Happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
So just to give you, just to give everyone a sense for the size of Cypress and what you're up to now, maybe you could talk through the scale of the development that you guys have been undertaking.
Sure. So currently I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Cypress Equity Investments. We're a LA-based development, multifamily apartment development company based here in Los Angeles. 5 offices around the country: Los Angeles, Denver, Dallas, Fort Lauderdale, and New York, New Jersey. And we cover more markets out of each of those different offices.
And until the change in the capital markets, you guys were starting $1 billion?
About $1 billion to $1.5 billion a year.
$1 billion and $1.5 billion to $1.5 billion a year of new apartments. Unbelievable. So I want to talk about how one gets oneself into that enviable position. So can we
One step at a time.
One step at a time. So let's go back and talk about how you got into the real estate business.
Prepare to be underwhelmed. So I don't know everybody here, but I can say confidently I'm assuredly the oldest person here. And what that means in this context is there was a time before cell phones, personal computers, Excel, all that sort of stuff. And we did real estate back then. And that's when I started in the business. So I went to school, graduated in 1980, and there was no information in the world. I mean, there's no internet. So how did you get information? And there really wasn't much. And in school, I had learned about investments and perfect markets and all that sort of stuff. And I'll come back to that part of it. But my job search in 1980 was literally to go to the companies that had the tallest office buildings and say, these guys must be doing something good, so let me go interview. So that was literally, I happened to walk into a life insurance company. And I said, do you have anything? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, because I'd done some research, and I said, how about if I get with your stocks and bonds company, because I knew they invested in securities. And they said, well, we're not really hiring in that area right now. We don't have any openings, but we have an opening in real estate. And I said, real estate? You guys sell houses? I mean, what does an insurance company do in real estate? So I had no idea of the idea of an investment class of real estate. Totally foreign to me. So anyway, I was told that if I went in real estate and worked with that group, that there'd be an opening in the next 6 to 9 months and I could move over to stocks and bonds. So that's what I did. And then ended up in the real estate group, and 6 months later, there was an opening in stocks and bonds, and they said, "You want to move over?" I said, "Fuck no, I'm a real estate guy now."
So tell us about what that meant to be a real estate guy at a life insurance company in the early 80s. Like, what were you doing?
Doing discounted cash flows by hand. How about that? How many here have done discounted cash flows by hand? There you go. Okay. There's a few of us. Fun times, right? So that's what I was doing. I was an analyst. And again, what I quickly realized, and coming back to my perfect markets comment earlier, is that there's investments, and I've always been taught investment world is a perfect markets world. Real estate isn't that today, and it sure wasn't that in 1980, again, with no information. And so it occurred to me that there could be an opportunity to create an edge by, just working a market and.
And you were backing developers, is that right?
That's correct.
You're providing equity to developers.
That's how I started.
Okay.
With the life insurance company.
And you, and you sort of, through that experience, start to build relationships with developers.
That is correct. And especially the Trammell Crow Residential Company, and then Leonard Wood, who went on to found Wood Partners. Some of you might know Leonard, fantastic guy. So I was investing with developers really at a young age, and I got to know Leonard pretty well. And so Leonard was, for those of you who want to know a little bit of that history, Leonard was the Trammell Crow Residential Partner for Central and North Florida back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I got to know Leonard. And Leonard, as he was growing his platform, said, I need a CFO. And CFO back then really was a capital raising exercise. And I'd come from capital, so I knew how to raise it. And so that's how I got with a development company. I joined Trammell Crow Residential in 1983 as the CFO for the Central Florida division.
And so your job at that point is primarily to raise capital for ground-up development projects.
Correct.
But you wanted to be a developer yourself.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, it was just all something new to me. I was still in my late 20s. I mean, this all happened really pretty fast and young. Again, it was, I think, a sign of the times. So, yeah.
And this is, just to set the sort of stage for everyone, this period in time there's a lot of development going on, right?
There is.
Fueled by the tax code.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, so I think one of the messages for today, as we think about whether or not our markets are in equilibrium, are we hitting the yields? Are we delivering the IRRs that we need to for capital? And the answer is no, we're not, for reasons that we all know. And so I talk to a lot of people, young people, who are like, how's this going to work? How are we ever going to afford these interest rates? That sort of thing. And, with the perspective of history, I certainly, I started in the world of super high interest rates. I mean, the stuff I was doing in the 80s was all driven by tax syndications. I don't know how many of you guys know that, but in the 80s, if you look at the production numbers in the US, there was a ton of apartments built in the 80s, and I built a bunch of them at Crow. And all of that activity was fueled by limited partnership tax syndications, which meant, among other things, that real estate didn't have to generate a yield. And so I had plenty of investors, and they never wanted a distribution. They didn't care if they got a distribution. They were getting accelerated write-offs, like 4-to-1 write-offs on the investment dollars. And so that fueled real estate. And so then 1989 happened, and what happened then was we had a law passed that basically did away with limited partnership and tax advantage syndication. And so apartments, which never had to generate a yield or not much of a yield, now all of a sudden lost our primary funding, which was all these tax advantage limited partnerships.
And it hits a wall.
It hits a wall. And I look at that as somewhat similar today. Like, we didn't have a yield. We weren't able to generate a yield because we never had to in order to, hit the metrics that was needed for, to justify ground-up development. And I think there's an analogy to today's situation in that regard.
And I wanted to talk also, so separately from the change in the tax law, you've also got the S&L crisis that hits.
Well, that's true too. And so, yeah, it's a double whammy. So whether we could have generated a yield or not, and we couldn't, there wasn't exactly any capital out there, any debt or equity capital to invest in any event. So it was a dead period. Sam Zell, who just passed, I think he said survived till, what did he say? Something till 23. What did he say?
Stay alive till 25.
Anyway, so back in the 1990s, Sam said survive till 95. That was the mantra. So we had a 4 or 5 year period where you couldn't justify.
You couldn't justify anything. There was no bank lending, right? The S&Ls were gone.
Yeah. So 5 years, that sounds like a long time, and it is a long time in our careers. But I'm here to tell you that things do get back in equilibrium.
And you pivoted pretty quickly. We talked about, because I asked, of course, when the business hit the wall, whether you had a bunch of PG debt that you were, but you had avoided that misstep. Remind me, you had funded guarantee companies?
Yeah, and so for what it's worth, the Trammell Crow residential model, some of you might have heard the Ron Terwilliger name, who was our managing partner for so many years and decades, I guess, and Ron had put together a regime of no personal guarantees. And so while the Trammell Crow Commercial Company was out there guaranteeing everything under the sun, and when the S hit the fan, that really hurt the Crow family and the Crow commercial partners on the residential side. we had structured all of our guarantees through guarantee corps. And so we funded a finite amount of money, and we put that up with our equity investors and lenders and said, this is our guarantee. And so that's what you got. You don't have any of us personally.
So when the business hit the wall, you were not personally in trouble.
Nope.
But
and I've adhered to that ever since, by the way. I've never PG'd anything personally.
That's amazing. So you've built 35,000 apartments without ever PGing anything.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. No, I haven't.
Unreal. Okay, so
But using guarantee corps. It's not like I don't guarantee. So a guarantee corp, right? I mean, it requires equity to be funded into it, and so that's our wealth. I mean, we've earned that money, so we lose that, but I don't.
But you're not losing your house.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, so so the business that you've been doing though for years hits a wall,
Right.
and you got to figure out what to do with yourself. But fortunately, you're pivoting into like what I think in retrospect is now like regarded as basically the greatest real estate acquisition opportunity of all time. What'd you do?
It was. So again, because of lack of information, the world back in the 60s, 70s, 80s in real estate was a very pro-cyclical world. And what I mean by that is every financial actor moved in unison. They all did the same thing. And so when times were good, everybody piled in and things became overbuilt and we had a problem from overbuilding. When times were bad, everybody went to the sidelines. That was real estate as I experienced it when I first joined it. So then you have the 1990 S&L meltdown where they basically stopped all those tax advantage syndication, created a lot of distress. And so there were three investors in the world who thought up this idea of buying up all the financially distressed real estate, and that was Goldman Sachs. They had Whitehall Fund. There's Morgan Stanley, who had MESREF, Morgan Stanley Real Estate Fund, and then the new on the scenes Apollo Real Estate Advisors. And so you got capital from one of those three groups from 90 to 95, and if you didn't, you had no capital. And so luckily we had connections, and so we were working with Goldman Sachs and with
So you and a couple of guys set up an acquisitions company effectively.
That is correct. So we were buying financial distress, yeah.
And you're buying apartments.
That is correct, all apartments.
Was it one market all across the country?
All across the country, although I'd say the distress then sort of started in the east, southeast, southwest, and then moved west. California was the last to experience the distress.
Can we talk about what the process was like? And we didn't discuss this upstairs. So of course you don't have the internet. You don't have the data is sparse. What did it look like? Like, did a broker call you and say, we have a package? Was there a tape? Like, how did the information get to you?
All the above. But I mean, it's like a personal network, you know? I mean, I had developed, and my colleagues had developed a large personal network, and people knew who we were. And again, there weren't many buyers, right? Because there wasn't much capital. And so people knew that we were a buyer because we had capital. And so.
How do you underwrite, though? I mean, you're sitting, I can't remember where you were. Are you in Florida at this point?
No, I'm in D.C.
You're in D.C. And you're getting these opportunities, and they're all over the country, right? How are you underwriting them? Like, how do you get comfortable?
It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. I mean, we were underwriting to 10 yields on cost. We were, because there was no capital. There was no capital.
So at that point, you figure, like, you don't need to know that much about the rents in the surrounding area or what's going on with the neighborhood or whatever. If you're getting a 10, you're getting a 10.
Right.
Got it. Okay. And so you've got, let's say, what you said 5 years roughly of that.
Right. And as the distress moved from east to west, again, we were always one of the handful of buyers in the market. And if we didn't win, most of the stuff was not one-off. It was all portfolios, so banks or insurance companies. I bought a lot of my own stuff back, as I told you. It's pretty funny.
So so he's buying stuff that had been foreclosed already.
100%. Who knew better than me? So.
Okay, so can you, just to give us a sense for like the size of that opportunity, how large a portfolio of the stuff that you
We ended up buying 6,000 units worth of stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean about 2,000 units of that was real estate, REO, and the other 2/3 of that was paper. And specifically, I don't know how interesting this is, but maybe it's not too much of a niche, but we were buying back distressed broken 80/20 bond deals. So there's a real technical, there were bond issuances out there to public holders.
And was that your expertise or one of your partners?
That was my expertise.
Your expertise.
Yeah.
So you're going out, and were you able to get leverage on this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
So who was
There was one,
who was providing the leverage?
General Electric Capital.
So GE Capital's providing leverage.
For those of you who have the gray hair like me, you guys remember GE Capital was a big player in real estate finance back in the day.
So they're providing the leverage, and those three private equity firms you're talking about are providing the equity.
Yeah.
Okay, and you amass 6,000 units, and then, but as you said, the opportunity starts to dry up.
Yeah, so I had been, like, if I didn't get a portfolio in the east or the southeast or the southwest, I might have missed it by 2% or something like that. And so I'll never forget this, but was bidding on a large Daiichi Bank portfolio out here in California in '95, and the bids came in, and I was down. I missed it by 30% in 1995, and so I went back to talk to my partners and said, "Well, this business is over. So time to do something different." So that was the end of the distressed opportunity. Things recovered really quickly.
I guess I want to pause there and ask you, many of us here have either had to reinvent ourselves or are on the cusp of having to do so. And now this is the second point in your career where you've pivoted entirely, basically, from development into distressed acquisitions, and then from distressed acquisitions, you're going to pivot back into development again. You're a calm guy, and you've seen a lot, but was there like a gnashing of the teeth? Was there it's easy in retrospect to present a story like it's a straight line, but obviously there are moments of doubt and frustration and everything. Do you remember what that was like when you're like, well, we've had this great 5-year run, like, fuck, got to do something else? Like, was there sadness? Was there pain?
No. Just no.
Because it's just life.
Yeah,
that's what you said.
It is. No, right. It was always exciting to me. I mean, my most fun times in the business, and I'm older. I'm 69 years old. And so people ask, why aren't you retired? I don't want to retire. I plan to never retire. I love this business. I love doing it every day. And part of the joy of it has been to learn different aspects of how to go about the business over the decades. And so I enjoy that process.
So so that, I mean, what a wonderful mindset and example for all of us. So the opportunity to buy this stuff for pennies on the dollar is now gone, and you're going to pivot back into the development business.
Right.
Talk to us about where you did that and what you decided to do.
Sure. So I had been a Florida developer with Trammell Crow Residential, and that was certainly a state that presented a lot of opportunities. So after this distress stuff, what we did is took our existing portfolio. So the REITs were being formed in the mid-90s. I mean, all the REITs that are out there today, I mean, they were formed, some go back to the 70s, but essentially they were formed in the mid-90s. That includes equity residential. And so I had some former Crow colleagues at EQR, and so they ended up just buying our entire portfolio, did an UPREIT transaction, and that was the exit for that
So you just become a passive shareholder in equity residential.
Yeah. What do I do next? So the light had come back on in the world. We had rents readjusted to a place where I could actually deliver a yield to somebody now. What a concept. And so that's what we did. And so I had known Penny Pritzker for some years, and so we talked, and she had some land holdings in Florida, and so we talked about creating a development company. So I ended up moving back to Florida and forming a development company, and the Pritzker family was my financial backer.
And you're building at this point like garden style, suburban.
Yeah, and a lot of the BTR, I told you, a lot of the BTR, a lot of the townhouses for rent stuff. I mean, I was building that in Tampa, Orlando in the late 80s, 90s.
What size deals are these? Is it 100 units?
These are larger deals. These are 150 is probably the smallest deal, and 500 would be the biggest deal.
Okay, and the Pritzker family is putting up the equity, and by this point there's construction debt available widely.
That's right,
okay.
That's right.
And then you kind of run through up until the dot-com crash.
Yes, although specifically, I mean, sadly the case with the Pritzkers is that their patriarch, Jay Pritzker, had a stroke, and then he passed away, and the family started to squabble about investments, and so they were no longer an investment partner of mine.
So you go from, this isn't a situation that I think, I've certainly experienced it, and I imagine some people in the audience have as well, the experience of having one equity partner who, for reasons that you can't control, and even that have nothing to do with your performance, exits the scene. Mm-hmm. And for many of us, that would feel like a pretty big blow. Did you experience it with the sort of same sense of calm that you're projecting now?
I had some former Crow colleagues, will be a repetitive comment here, but, so I had some Crow colleagues who were up in San Francisco developing, and they had a vision to develop multifamily housing using modular construction. And so I had a good background in construction that I had developed by that period of time. So I had sort of an open invitation to come
So
out to.
you knew that you could move out there, and they were doing.
That's what I did.
And how were those? Just out of curiosity, how were those capitalized? Was it? Did they have private equity partners?
Well, so now we're in the for sale decade, right? I mean, the 2000s, the aughts. That's the for sale decade. We're not building purpose-built apartments. I mean, everything is built. All multifamily is being built for sale, pretty much. So the for sale model allows you, and so we built a lot of for sale using modular construction. That's to cut to the chase. And that was all in a townhouse sort of variety. And so that allowed us to do sort of 40-unit phases and just roll them. So we're able to do that with our own capital.
So you're doing your own money, you're just building these things, selling them out, and then recycling the capital. Okay. And you're doing this all the way through 3, 4, 5, and then then wham.
Yeah, exactly right. That's
but you have not been PGing.
No, I've been with a guarantee entity only.
Right. Yeah. And so you get hit just like everyone else did, and you told me you experienced some financial pain from this.
It was not in any vertical deals. Those we all sold out, never lost money, but we had gotten ahead of ourselves. We thought that we had created this great model of building townhouses using modular construction, which was what I was doing. And what was I just saying?
Well, so you bought and then you're building these things, and then you run into the
Right. So what had happened was we had bought land in advance because we thought, man, we figured this out, modular, all this sort of stuff. And so we were sitting there with a lot of land. And so I had a lot of equity tied up in land. I lost that equity.
Did you have the land levered at that point?
We did.
You were levered long land heading into the GFC.
Yeah, the value never fell below the loan value, but my equity was wiped out.
Just out of curiosity, how did you resolve that? Like, did you hold the land through, or did you end up giving it back to the bank, or what were the resolutions?
We just sold it. We sold it at current market value.
Got it. Okay,
yeah. But I was able to repay the loans.
But with basically none of your own equity left. Okay. So again, now you're going through another one of these things where you've just spent most of a decade building for sale product. The market turns. And you take some, without having, you didn't lose your house, but you lost a considerable amount of your own money, which you had been rolling into these deals. So again, like.
I mean, it was not a hit below the waterline. I mean, it was painful, but it was not.
But it was not fatal. Yeah. Many of us, having experienced a loss like that, again, would have got into mourning or something. It sounds like the recurrent theme here is that you did not. So what did you do?
There's no point to going into mourning, right? I mean, it's easy to say, but there's not. So what did I do about what?
Well, what did you? I mean, so you sell the land out, and then you got to go back in the business. You got to earn a living. So what was the move after that?
Well, so then we're in 08 to 11, and so I was just buying personal distressed. I mean, I was buying a lot of, Fairfield. I was in Northern California at the time, so I was buying a lot of Vallejo, Fairfield stuff that was
single-family homes
that were built and selling for $850,000. Vegas too, buying them at like $175,000, renting them out, and then just sold them when the market recovered.
Now I'm really curious. So you were personally doing this? Did you set up an organization, or you just did it?
I had one analyst.
So you got an analyst, and you were just literally with your own money, just going around buying foreclosures like a bunch of the people out here were. I love it. And then just selling them.
Right. Okay. But we're in a transition period, so I know it's just kind of treading water during that period.
And then you get back into the development.
Yeah, I mean, in 2011, the world starts to recover, and so we can start playing offense again.
And what did that look like?
So we could all start to develop again. So I ended up joining. Told you Trammell Crow be a recurring theme here. So I joined some other Crow partners of mine, former Crow partners of mine, also up in the Bay Area. And we just were Bay Area developers. We were Silicon Valley developers. Early in the recovery, San Francisco got hot. I was a San Francisco developer. That was the dumbest thing in my life. And
Why do you just, I mean, I think I know why you're saying that, but maybe you could, for the benefit of
for all the reasons everybody would imagine. I mean, that city is just brain dead. It's terrible.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, right. So, no, it became very apparent it was not possible to build housing. I could do a whole talk all about that. But so anyway, that's 2015. I realize I'm a developer in San Francisco. I don't want to be a developer in San Francisco. So I don't know who here knows of our company, Cypress Equity Investments, and our founder, Michael Sorochinsky, brilliant guy. He's got his own fascinating story. So he is an investor in ground-up real estate development and coming out of the great financial crisis. And as an investor, he really had no background in real estate development, and so he had been investing with other development platforms and said, kind of like the business, I'd like to bring it in-house. So he and I knew each other, and so I was looking to get out of San Francisco. He was looking to create his own development capability in-house, and so that's when I joined him in 2015.
You joined Cypress in 2015,
Correct.
and in that period between then and last year, you built a...
Yeah, we were 5 people, and now we're like 70 people, and 5 offices, and so.
And I want to just talk briefly, in the couple of minutes remaining to us, about how you're viewing this latest pivot. You've lived through the market changing many times now.
Right.
You've experienced, obviously, ups and pretty significant downs. And you were, as recently as a year and a half ago, starting $1 billion or $1.5 billion in apartments every year. And obviously, that's no longer the case.
Correct.
And you've got a bunch of mouths to feed in the organization, and you're pivoting, and you've pivoted again. So tell us about how you're trying to navigate things now.
Yeah, sure. So we have obviously stuff in progress, and that's continuing to generate fees to help support the organization. But we pretty immediately have pivoted now. So we had a little bit of background in affordable LIHTC stuff, but we've just pivoted in a huge way. So right now, I am looking for 0 market rate land opportunities for ground up, and I am scouring the South for LIHTC opportunities, primarily in Texas and Florida. Florida is a great LIHTC market for those of you who want to play. There's stuff to learn there, but I think it's one of the better opportunities in the country today. Florida and California are also creating workforce. So the LIHTC is the deeply affordable stuff, and then both states are also creating, and Texas has had, workforce programs, which essentially work off of 80 to 120 of AMI sort of income level, and you get a property tax abatement in exchange for holding rents to that level. Texas has been doing it, for those of you who know Texas, called PFC deals for years, and those got pretty abused, so there's definitely scrutiny on those these days. So you can still do LIHTC in Texas. Workforce is a little bit more challenging. But you can do LIHTC in Florida, and Florida, they just passed last year, or this year actually, their SB 102 Live Local Act, which is a fantastic workforce housing program. It needs, and we're working on some legislative changes right now because there's some fixed things that need to happen, but those should be done in the next legislative session.
And you think that that's like, if you were a young developer starting out, is that where you would be looking right now?
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll close there. Thank
Okay.
you for sharing. Well, no, I think for sharing that. I mean, I think you basically just gave us an alpha there for anyone who's listening.
But I mean, the message is, this business is this. I mean, know that. This is the business we've chosen. And some folks got the reference. And it is a volatile business, and just know 2 things. You got to be resourceful at all times. This business rewards resourcefulness. And you got to just know that we'll get through this, and tomorrow is a different opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate it.
Good to see you.